welcome to my Stamp Anything Valentine's class with my boop sausages for Valentine's. We're going to be colouring in these today and making up this simple card. And to get ready you need to print out your topper onto craft card. In this case it's the Kendall Manila Buff from the shop, and then I always print out a darker version as well, so when I lose lines in this version I can refer back to the other version and know what I'm doing. So let's get on with the colouring. Hi, so I've zoomed in on the little dog on the left, so we're going to start with them. Just going to focus the camera again and get going. So as normal we're going to colour our sort of solid images, solid parts of the dog first, and then if we flick fur over the top of them it will make sense. So we're going to do eyes and nose. So we're going to start doing a white base coat for the eye, and it's a circular thing, so colour it in circles. Helps keep the shape. We want to get all the way to the edge. Now dog eyes are usually white on the edge and then brown and black, so we're going to follow standard dog eye colours, and I'm also going to do a white layer on the nose, so I'm going to do little browny black noses. Okay, and then we're going to swap to our 115 orange. So what we're going to do, the brown part of the dog eye we want to be kind of rich, so giving it sort of an orange undercoat will be helpful. So let's start by doing, I'm going to ignore the highlight area completely, and I'm going to do almost up to the edge in orange as our sort of base layer. Then I'm going to swap to my 190 Venetian red for the next layer of orangey brown. Basically just making a really rich lively brown colour for the majority of the eye. And then around the edge I'm going to go around in walnut brown, so we're going to do an edge round, doing it in small stages, so if I go off piste it's not going to be that hard to correct, but once I'm pretty sure of my shape, confident, I can go round a little. Let's give that a floof with my Stamp Anything floofer. And then because the top of the eye would be slightly shaded by the lashes and fur, we're going to make the top part of the eye, so we're using an arch, slightly darker brown than the bottom. And then when we've done that once, we're going to give it a mix with our white, so just using the white to blend our colours together. Now we're going to do that once more, so back to our walnut brown, put in that dark edge again, so our dark ring around the edge. Then let's shade in the top for our shadow, and then let's lighten the bottom, so this is where the light would pool inside the eye. That's that bottom bit. Then we could do with a little bit of a blend, so I'm going to go into my 115 and just blend those top colours together. I need to bring my 190 in to blend my 177 and my 115, and then in again now. So you can either go in with your black 199, or if you've got dark sepia you might want to try dark sepia instead, which is just a very dark brown, it's 175. I'm going to go in with my 199, and then I'm going to do a backward C shape for my eye centre. Doing the backwards C lets you see where you need to put your highlight on afterwards. So now I just want to make sure it's round. Let's give it a floof. almost in, and then we're going to pop for, let's floof it because I can see quite a lot of dust. So we're going to pop for our white Posca pen or white gel pen. Do a little highlight in top left. It's just a little system that always works rather than actually being the law. You do your own system if you've got one. And then my second spot of light I'll do also just slightly covering the black diagonally opposite the other highlights. Now we've got in a little eyeball. So let's do nose next using practically the same colours. Let's go in for 190 all over the nose. Swap to 177 walnut brown, and now we're going to actually start to put in a bit of the T-shaped detail. So let's do a little semicircle about midway on that bottom line. We're going to colour that in dark, but we are going to pop a little bit of 177 around the edge of the nose. And then let's have a blend of that 177 out. Got quite a lot of light shining on it. Let me just see if I can alter the lighting a bit. There we go, it's that bit easier to see. Might not be as light, but that might be easier to see. And then I'm going to use my 190 to blend in that 177. So if you want a darker nose, you're going to add more 177 or 175, the dark sepia, if you want it super dark. So I'm just going to do a little bit more with my walnut brown. Oops. Get that little semicircle in again. I'm going to use my white to add a bit of highlight on this side of the nose, and then a little bit of highlight on the very far side of the nose. So we've implied that it's a little bit wet and a little bit spherical. We're doing both of those, and you could also add now a little bit of spot of white Posca paint on your nose to give it that extra healthy wet glisten. So that's the eye and the nose done. So we're going to go with the traditional black and tan dachshund. So Annie has kindly given us some guidelines that we can work around. So basically all the underside of the dog and this little area on the chest is going to be tan. This area of the jowl and nose tan, this little bit of eyebrow tan, the rest dark browny black colours. So we're going to layer the lowest layer of fur first and then work upwards. If you find it easier to flick in one direction, please move your piece of paper around to reflect whichever direction you find it easiest in. I find it easiest pulling towards me, but for the purposes of not making you feel seasick, I'm going to leave the camera steady and do my best. You are going to need a super sharp white pencil to do this, and you do have to stop often and resharpen, and it is a little bit annoying, but the result shows if you keep your pencil sharp. So let's start with their tail right at the bottom, flicking up for me. But what you want is, that's going to be the lowest layer of fur, so you want to work up them there, up the tail. And then we're going to do some little lines around the paws. Same again, lowest layer first. And sometimes I am turning my pencil so I'm using the sharpest edge available to me at that point. So we've lost a bit of detail of our paws, etc. when we do that, but as you can see just above, I've printed out the image again with black lines, so I can refer to that later if I've lost any details as I've put in my pencils, pencil fur layer. So basically what we're doing is we're making a layer of white pencil at the bottom with all the fur going in the right direction that we can then use as a guide for all the rest of the fur after that. It's basically making some sort of resist on the paper, so that texture and those lines will come through even with the other colours on top. So let's carry on now. So we're going to go down the body. So the hair is lowest at the bottom end and highest at the chest end, so that's the direction we're going to go in. We're going to have a little bit of a curve on it for the bottom. and that's what we're going to continue with around this sort of rump area. Then we're going to switch to almost just going straight up. Now as soon as your lines start to get thick, you're going to have to bite the bullet and have another sharpen, but turning your pencil can keep you going for a bit longer. And if it's coming out clumpy, etc., you just need to go sharpen. It's as simple as that. So I already need to have a sharpen. Now we're going to, as we colour now, we're going to come round the corner a bit as we colour. So you can see that we're turning as you go, so we're almost upright by the end. So almost horizontal, coming round a little bit, then almost vertical. So keep doing that up to the underside of the neck. So that's the whole body underlayer done. Let's have a floof. So obviously you wouldn't have to do too much if it was going to be a white dachshund, but it's not. Gonna have another sharpen, and because my ear is over the face jowl area, that means we have to do the jowl area first because it's lowest. So we're going to have to start from, so the face grows down the face, like the fur grows down the face, not up the face. So the furthest and lowest layer on the face will be the very far end of the face, so this end, and it will be going this way. So quite an expanse to do at the moment, and we're going to carry that down in layers down to the nose. Now if you want to slightly curve it at the top and slightly curve it at the bottom for a bit more shape. So now we turn and we're going slightly round a corner like that. So let's do it this end as well. So a few on an angle, then a few pretty straight, and then just a bit round the corner. So we're kind of making a bit of a curve as we go. I'm not going to worry about where the eyebrow is at this stage. You see how my lines are starting to get a bit thick and clunky? It means I need to sharpen. And continue. So the idea is to get an irregular layer of fur and them not all joined together. Sometimes you do find you draw your lines at the same place. Don't worry, just move on to the next line. Hopefully it'll be more random next line. Alright, now I'm going to just work on this bit above the eye. So gone round there. Then we're going to do this bit in front of the eye. And then let's carry on now for the rest. Keep working in layers. And that slightly curved line we're working on. And then let's just do little cheeky bits. Going a bit thick, I need to sharpen. Just using a cheap plastic pencil sharpener, nothing special. Then the ear, so the lowest part of the ear is this part, so that's the part that we start on, the lowest layer of fur. We're just working on a slightly curved line up the ear. And you see it's a slight U shape. Lines are a little bit longer up the ear, the fur's a little bit longer. to sharpen, including the sound effect of sharpening. So you keep going up. Now when we start to get to where the ear joins the head, we're going to have to start to curve round so we can meet the line. So we're going to start to work in a curve now. So curving round. You see we're starting to curve around a corner now. Keeping with our lines, but we've almost changed direction. So going round in a bit of an arch and joining up the ear. So that's the undercoat done for the doggy on the left. Because our tan areas, apart from the eyebrow, are in the lowest parts of the body, let's do the tan areas first. The first thing I'm going to do is very softly add some yellow hue to what's going on. So I'm using my 109, my dark yellow, and all the bits that are going to be tan are now going to have a sort of a yellow hue. So I'm going to press very lightly. I'm going to use the side of my pencil. I'm not colouring any of the lines. I'm literally just using yellow on my tan areas. On it, so you can see the white just pops through. That's sort of the resist we made with the white. So I'm using my yellow to just add yellow hue to the area. This just helps me achieve a nice golden rich colour without actually having to do a yellow layer, which isn't really suitable for a naturally coloured creature. So let's swap now on to super sharp 187, which burnt ochre, and we're going to do a layer of hair over all those tan bits, following the lines that we did with our white. Only quite small areas. But we do want them to show up. Could do a bit of a floof. And then these cheeks. So aim to follow your lines underneath, but you're going for a random pattern again. You're not actually just going over the top of them randomly. You're not trying to actually follow them exactly, just the direction that they're going in. As we're losing the mouth a little bit by doing that bit, but you know that that's why we've got her guide picture above to follow. And let's pop in some orange for his eyebrow. Okay, so actually I'm quite a good colour there, but I'd like to add a bit more of an orangey tint, so I'm going to use my orange out of the 24 set, which is 115, and I'm just going to pop in sporadic bits of orange. So I'm not doing as many as I did in the last layer, but I am doing a few, so it's less of a flat colour, a little bit more orangey. And now I want to do the infill layer for that, so I'm going to use 190 as my infill layer. So this is the layer that we do backwards into the edges of what we've just done, so you're basically providing the shadow colour for those bits of fur. So I've got super sharp 190, and I'm going to infill. Now if you're very fastidious, you can just infill between the little hairs, or you can do it randomly like me. And what we're doing is we're doing a little flick up in between the hairs to basically give those very edge hairs a shadow. I'm going to do it again. I've sharpened again, So what I'm doing is I'm flicking up, pencil's not cooperating, so I'm flicking up the direction the lines are going in, but I'm doing upwards, not downwards, and I'm doing it on the very edge in between bits of fur. So you're giving an edge to your fur, giving your eye sort of that outline that it can rely on when looking at the creature, and it will make sense. So we're going to do it on top of the nose, little inflicts, and then we're going to do it almost as a shadow layer where that ear goes over the top of his jowls. So we're going to flick in sort of in between our hairs. That's given that a bit of shadow, and then we're going to do the same on the top layer of his little eyebrow. Okay, so that layer's done. Let's move on to our darker coloured layer. So let's do our 190 again. Let's get that sharp. I'm going to do a layer of 190 all over the other bit. So we're making a reddy brown hue to this darker layer. So starting on his tail, then swapping to his, so we're doing it in the same order that we did it last time. We're now doing a 190 layer over the top of the white layer that we did, following the same kind of lines. So a bit more careful with those short hairs by his feet. That's one layer of 190 all over. I'm going to do a sharpen. This is just our base layer, our base colour for the darker bit. So let's do his head now. Remember, turn your paper around if you find it easier. You don't really have to think because you've done your white layer, and your white layer included all the thinking. I'm just going to go up to that line, so we will do a bit of a work on some of these joins later on, but just at the moment let's just fill in this base colour for the dark colours. Now swap to his ear, slightly longer strokes. I need to sharpen again. It's tempting not to, but it does make a difference. So we're doing slightly longer. See, it's much easier for me to pull towards me when I do fur. You might find flicking away from you is easier for you. Do what's easy. Turning my pencil to get a sharp edge again. Turning that corner to make our hair meet up a bit more naturally. That's our base layer. Let's do a floof. Next layer is going to be 177 walnut brown. I'm going to give it a sharpen, so I want it nice and sharp to start with. pointy. Here we go again, another layer all over, but this time in the brown. So I'm just pulling down the same way as last time. So you can see that, so even though we're doing a dark layer for the rest of the dog, it's actually got lots of colours in it now, rather than just being flat and dark. And also it's quite rich and warm because of that already brown layering that we did. And I need to sharpen again. So now we've got this bit of his head. So although it looks a bit like I'm scribbling left to right, I'm actually only pressing down, going right to left. It does actually, if you actually do press both ways, it does give quite a nice effect. If you wanted to try it, maybe not midway through a colouring though. So now I've got a little bit of a curve on it. Just avoiding going over his nice eyebrow. Okay, now ear, I'm going to need to sharpen. So my pencil's at that stage, I'm going to regard that as definitely needing a sharpen. Starting from the bottom of his ear, just slightly longer strokes. There is a pretty velvety. So if we lose a bit more of the texture as we go, it's not a problem. Here's where we need to start going round in a circle. So if you want to do a smoother coat, it's shorter lines all closer together. If you want to do a rougher coat, longer lines further apart. And then we do the joining up layer. Okay, so that's our first 177 layer. In real life, it's paler and redder. If yours is looking a bit paler and redder, that'll be, it's my lighting, I presume. Right. Okay, so now I want to go in with a darker colour. So you can go in with 199 black if you want, or I'm going to use 175, which is dark sepia. So this is a dark brown. I'm going to do exactly the same thing again now, but maybe a little bit more carefully because I want this to be my last colour I'm using. So I'm going up the tail, so you can do this in black. You might want to do less strokes if it's looking a bit dark. So I'm not going to do as many strokes this time as I did with the 177. Actually going to space them out a bit more. So what I want to do is make it darker without making it too heavy. I want to concentrate a bit more of the dark in the shadow area under his head, creating a bit of a shadow, and then I also want to do it in the fur under his ear, but keeping in direction with the fur underneath at this point. So it looks like there's a bit of a shadow cast by that ear. Same up here. A little bit more of the dark, a little more close together in the area under the ear, and then I'm going to do a not as close together as the 177, just making the overall effect a bit darker. Remembering not to go over that eyebrow. And then the ear, need to sharpen. You have to keep the faith with fur, even if it doesn't look spot on right now, that we can make it look right eventually, but it is a process and there are definitely layers where it doesn't look as good, but it'll get there, don't worry. So I'm doing it slightly thinner than I did the 177 layer, but still with slightly longer strokes and still following the curve of the ear. So that's the main body of the colouring done. Now we need to do the blending of the furs, tidying up the edges, etc. So I'm going to do a good part of that with my 177. So I'm going to give it a sharpen. And there are a few areas around the edge that don't really look very finished. So starting in the bottom of the ear area, I'm just going to flick down over those edges, sort of tidily, finishing off at the right kind of point, making them a bit more solid, hiding our grayscale line underneath. So a bit more tidy. Similarly on the head, got a similar kind of issue, so gentle strokes up over that edge, filling it in a little bit, making it a little bit more solid, and going over that grayscale line a bit better. Got a bit of a similar issue down here on his chest and on this foot for sure. Being quite gentle, not pressing down too firmly, sort of a gently does it thing. I think that's all the problem areas where I hadn't quite done my lines properly. Resharpen. So now let's do our back filling. I'm going to do it with 177. Might need to do it with something darker, but let's have a go 177 first. So we're going up sort of in between the hairs, short pointy lines, and we're sort of infilling between hairs. A little bit around the tail. So on the edges, little sharp pointy lines. So we're going to do it up round his ear. So work out, you've got your reference picture above. Work out where your edge of your ear is, and we're infilling between hairs, defining the edge of the ear. I'm making a bit of a shadow. Need to have another. It does make an instant tidying effect. Gives you a proper edge, which is a bit more pleasing to the eye. So you're trying to go up in between the fur lines. Do it precisely, or just do it randomly around the edge. We need to do it over the top of his head too. So that's my full layer. Still need sharpen again, and we'll do his paws and chest. So dust up a little way around the bottom, so just like define the edge of his paw, and then I'm going to do it up this chest. Okay, next thing we want to do is, still using a 177, we're going to cut into the creamy layer, where the creamy layer goes over the top of the darker layer. So where this muzzle goes over the top of his chest, that's an area we can cut in with our, so basically you're putting in the layer of darker fur that's underneath that pale fur. And then if you want to blend it in a bit, do some strokes down to blend the colour in a bit. So that's where it goes over the top of it. Where it goes under it, kind of need to do the opposite effect. So by doing that, what we're going to do is go over, just go over with 177. Has a similar way to do it. So we're not going to cut in with a paler colour, we're just going to bring our darker colour down a little bit. So here, where our dark fur goes over our light fur, we're just going to bring the dark fur down a bit. In this case, where the cream fur is going over the dark fur, we're going to have to do the cutting in. So we're going to, wrong way, up in between the strands. So it looks like they're overlapping each other rather than being solid lines. So in this case, the dark colour is going over the light colour, so we can just bring the dark colour down a bit to blend. Same with this area. Same with this area. And then let's tackle his eyebrows. So the brown bit is over the top of this part of his eyebrow, but underneath the other bit of his eyebrow. So we're going to 177 over the top. But we're going to 177 cut in this bit because it's under. Next thing I want to do is tidy up the white circle around his eyes. So we're going to very gently sketch it in. You can still see the eye underneath. I'm going to very gently sketch in an edge with our 177. So we know where we're aiming up to. And then let's do some hairs to fill any gaps that has revealed. And then you can even flick up over the eye a little bit for the bit of hair that's underneath it. And use my white, give it a sharpen to make some of that area, that band of no colour, a little bit whiter. not too white. And then I'm going to 177 in that edge. I lost a bit then. Make the eye nice and clear. Now I'm going to make his eyebrow a little bit more dramatic by sharpening up a white and doing some white flicks over the dark in his eyebrow. So looking up, his eyebrow is a little bit more dramatic. Then I'm going to whack in with my 115, some orange. Then I'm going to swap to my burnt ochre to make his eyebrow a little bit more floofy but a little bit more involved in the process. Then I'm going to use my dark sepia, or you could use black to do that cutting in technique again, but this time paying more attention to where the lines are. So I'm actually now doing it, cutting in above the eyebrow around those lines, so it's a little bit more pronounced, looks like there's a bit of shadow. I'm going to use a similar technique, cutting in behind the ear and gently behind the ear where the creamy area is. I'm going to go now for my 190 and give it a bit of a sharpen, and we're going to actually put back in his mouth a little bit, which has disappeared. So we're going to cut in upwards around the top of his mouth. And then shadow downwards a little bit under his mouth. Swap to my burnt ochre. Cut in lines and shadow line. And then I'm going to go back to my 177 and very carefully add a little line for his smile and cut in a little bit with the 177. I hope that it looks a little bit more like part of the image. Next thing I'm going to do is a bit something pretty similar around his paws. So I'm going to have a little 177 sharpen. Gently sketch a line at the bottom of his paws, just to make them little and solid, and then flick up a little on both feet. And then on the back feet, pop back in his little claw lines. You can see it well on the front feet, but I will just see if I can get them back in at least a little bit. And let's have a floof. Okay, so I'm just a little bit of a tidy up and things I want to change. I'm just going to sharpen my 190, and the area here where the dark comes into the light's looking a bit solid, so I'm going to 190 a little bit of that crossover between the two hairs a little bit, then swap for my 177 and try that line again. There are a couple of places where I can still see far too much red through my dark colours, so everywhere I see a bit like that, I'm going to pop in now and break up those. I've got like slightly darker red patches that I want to give up. Also, as I'm going around the outside, if I want to make any of my edges a little bit more furry and less exact, I can do a few sharp strokes. So yeah, what I'm doing is if I've got any patches of red, I'm breaking it up a little bit with some 177 and making it a bit darker. You can still see our original white layer through it, even though we've done several layers now. So the white layer really does work, so it's worth spending a bit of time getting that bit right. I'm going to do a little bit of cutting in with a darker colour on his belly, because his belly will be a bit more shaded, and a little bit down on that leg in the background, push it back a little bit. Definitely got some areas on his ears that are still a little bit too red, so I'm going to 117. So I'm obviously doing it in different layers now, but we've got that much saturation on the page. All I want to do now really is alter dominant colours in areas and make them a bit darker. There's not much you can do about what's, you're not really, you can't change much about what's there now, but you can add hues and colours to it quite easily. Going to do a few lines across the join. So sharpening my 177 again, it's gone a bit blunt, just going to do a bit of the same action on his face. Just breaking up those ready patches that are a little bit too thick still. A bit more flicking in for the nose part. And then what you can do is take a white and flick the white back over the brown part, so it looks like there's hairs going back over the brown, and then we can just use our 109 over the area to take the whiteness away and make it a bit more golden. So now I've got some hair going back over the brown part as well. And then I'm going to sharpen up my 101 white, and I'm just going to add a few highlight areas in with white. So maybe a little bit on his bottom, because as normal my light's coming in from top left. So let's do him a couple of white highlight hairs on there, and maybe a few on his ear, sorry. Just like the light's catching it a little bit. Remember, we're going with the lines underneath still. Gonna whiten up that bit around his eye. Having a think. A bit more white in his eyebrow. And add a bit of a yellow hue to those white bits that I've done in that area. Just using the side of my pencil. Just add the hue into wherever you want it. And for the moment, let's regard him as done. What I will do is, because I put the white spots in early, they've now got dust on them. So I'm going to re-put my white dots in. And as I said earlier, you could add a little gleam to his nose, so her nose, so I shall do. And let's move on to the next bit. Another thing I want to do at this stage is just have a quick clean round. I'm going to use my electric rubber. I'm using the Derwent one, but there's a pink one I think in the Stamp Anything shop. If not, I apologise, but I think there is. To be honest, I've had a few and they all work exactly the same. So I'm just going to neat this and this around the edge, because we've done quite a lot of dark colours. There's quite a lot of dark dust occurring. I'm not going in too tight, because obviously I've flicked over the edge a few times. You don't want to take off too much of the colouring. So just give him a little bit of a tidy before we carry on. Obviously, don't flick off the rubber until you're sure the Posca pen has dried. I'm going to work across from left to right for a change. I'm not usually that organised. So let's do some white undercoat. So we're going to colour in our heart and our letters. Let's start heart first. So white undercoat all over. It's quite a good idea if you can get your white over the line without being too much over the line. But, you know, just do your best. So when that's all on, what we're going to do is we're going to really use bauble technique, but we're going to apply it to a heart. So it doesn't work exactly right, however it gives a nice three-dimensional look and isn't too complicated to do, which I think is probably what's most important in life. So I'm going to choose a relatively bright red to start with, so I'm going to do Pale Geranium Lake, which is 121. Give it a bit of a sharpen. So what we want to do is, to start with, we want to give ourselves an edge. So gently sketch in your edge all the way round. Just go slow. If you're not feeling confident, don't press too hard. Go more sketchy until you're happy with your line. And you can breathe. Just going to have that as my line. So bauble technique would be, top left hand corner would be a highlight area, and then bottom right hand corner would be a shine area. Because this is a heart, we're going to have another smaller shine area in the top left of the heart there as well. So everything else needs to be red. So let's sketch in our first layer of red. And we're going to leave those areas I've just drawn in with no colour. If you can just do it without actually drawing them in, that works better, because obviously you don't have the lines around them, which is not very natural for shine. So just leave gaps if you can. Now I'm going to swap over to 219, slightly darker red in the 24 pack. And we're going to begin to add a slightly darker, richer red on the right hand side of things. So these are the sides furthest away from the light, and we want them to be in most shadow on that right hand side. I've got a bit of a messy edge there, so I'm just going to pop with my electric rubber, just clean up that line a little bit. Go back in with my dark red pencil and then neaten that line up again. Need to floof. Then I'm going to do a blend layer in white. So try and just do all the red first, so you don't drag pink into your white highlight areas. We're just blending, so we don't want this end result colour, but we want a nice blend underneath our red so they come out, they pop. So when we've got our highlight areas, circle round, don't go all the way into the middle, and that will blend your pink into your white. Same here, circle round, and on here bring the white in from both sides. Try not to drag pink all the way through. Let's have a floof. Swap again now, back to our 119, a Pale Geranium Lake, so that's lighter red. And here we go again. filling in. I'm using pretty much circular motions to try and get an even colouring and not too liney. I'm pressing reasonably firmly, but using the pencil sideways, so it's actually sort of getting this sort of step. Swap to our darker red again. We're bringing darker red in down this area here, and then down this side. Just blend in a bit with our lighter red by softly pushing this colour in. Maybe another boob. Let's take that out. You could use your rubber pencil for little mistakes like that. Let's have a floof. More blending until we get a nice smooth result. Just blending that lighter red and darker red together at this corner. Starting to get more solid. Same down this side. I would keep adding red and keep blending until I was happy with the result. Obviously, if you can blend with the red rather than keep adding white, it makes the process a bit quicker, but your red might not be creamy enough to properly blend with. You might need to revert to white again and then go in to darken everything up again in layers to get a nice smooth result. Sometimes just a nice smooth blend of pencils just takes time and patience, unfortunately. This version of the 219 I've got going at the moment is not a very creamy pencil. It's also extremely cold where I'm colouring at the moment. It makes a big difference to how these pencils blend. But if I put on my heater you can't hear me, so though that may be preferable you're thinking, but okay, so we're almost at saturation point now. Just keep changing directions to break up those lines a bit. Might have to do is turn on the heating and have another go. Anyway, keep layering down the red till you're happy with the result. It becomes very shiny with polychromos. Your pencil starts to saturate the paper. You want to stop before you go through the paper. Almost there. It looks better on the screen than it does in real life because of the angle that I'm colouring it. Anyway, okay, I'm almost at saturation point. Highlights are quite well blended. Just do this bit again. Can be a much harder line, that one on the right hand side. Let's have a floof. Let's have a little tidy. Come over the edge. Hopefully you're not tidier than me. I'm a messy colour. Have a floof. Well, and then what I'd also do is with my white Posca pen, the top left hand corner would have an additional white highlight. If it was a bauble, it looks like it needs to be a bit bigger, and a little one. And then you could add one up on the right hand side too, show you what that looks like. If you're not happy with it and you use Posca pen, you can pick it off. Only advantage of using Posca pen, it's a bit harder to do when you're using gel pen, but also possible. I've scraped off gel pen in the past. Okay, so let's move on to Boop. So we want to do sharp white because it's quite fine, and we're going to colour it in. So just going to colour between the lines and do it white, and then we're going to replace the edge when we finish colouring. So just try and stay in between the lines when you're colouring. Obviously adding the black line at the end really neatens it up. I quite like the effect of colouring text with your pencils if you do like a cast topper and you want to print it all out in one go. I think it can look pretty neat. So I quite fancy doing a red pink ombre type effect, so I'm going to use my Deep Scarlet Red 219, and then I'm going to use the pink Madder Lake, which is 129. Unfortunately, the 24 box doesn't really come with many good sort of pink colours, so I definitely would invest in just one of the bright pinks. So I'm going to do an ombre effect, so let's do red at the bottom and pink at the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to colour in pink over the white that we just laid down. And then drag it down into what's going to be the red too. And do that all over the words. So much easier colouring on a warm day. Anyway, let's keep going. So I'm going to take it a bit further down. Not using any particular technique, I'm just trying to get the pink down. Then I'm going to swap over to my red and colour up with red from the bottom. It's a bit of a creamier consistency as well, which makes it a bit easier. Up into the pink. Obviously, you can, if you don't like these colours, you want to do something else, do something else. Then I'm going to need to do a blend with a sharp white. It's another time we're just going to have to bite the bullet and build up some layers. Though it's not too bad on the first go. There's quite a high shine on it, so I might move my light a little bit for less shine if I can. No, doesn't seem to be an option for less shine. Anyway, so let's go back in. This time I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to make sure my red's pretty sharp and put in the bottom layer again. If you wanted to resort to pens for this, but I would definitely understand. But I do quite like the slick polychromo look on letters as well, looks cool. And swap back to the pink. Drag it into the red to get a bit of a blend going. They are actually these two, this pink and this red, run nicely together. Now I just want to go and have a little bit of a tidy with my rubber. And that you can see the colouring has gone over the lines. Let's have a floof. I'm going to sharpen up my pink. And just do a bit of a letter tidy. Now you could either pop in your edge lines using a black micron pen, which will go over polychromos fine, or you could do it using your black pencil or another pen if you have one that you like. I think it might look quite nice going over with the dark red, so I'm going to do that now. Well, not the dark red, the 219. So let's give it a sharpen and see how that looks. Remember to refer back to your picture above if you can't see the lines. Slow and steady. So you could use a paint pen for this as well, or if you've got something sparkly, that might be cool, like sparkly Sakura pen or something like that. Looks alright, isn't super tidy, but not too bad. Let's just get rid of that mistake, do a little fix. And then I suggest we're gonna pop some highlight on it as well. Just sort of touching up mistakes and things now. Quite like, so let's go for a highlight pen or a white Posca pen or white gel pen if you've got one of those. And we're gonna, on the left hand side of our letters, we're going to add a bit of white highlight. So where the light would hit the letter, it doesn't have to be a continuous line. Sometimes it looks better if the lines are broken up. Just add some highlight on the left side of our letters. Okay, so that's the heart done, boop done, onto the second dog. So on to dog 2, let's quickly pop in and do nose and eye again. White undercoat for both to start with. Get the eye in. Colour in circles if you want to make something look circular. A bit more carefully than me maybe. Okay, white layer in, and then we're going to do eye similar to the eye on the left. Don't worry if it's not identical. We're going to start by doing an orange layer underneath, so we're going to get that nice rich colour as we did with the other dog. Then I'm going to go swap over to the 190. So my orange I was using is 115. Swap over to the 190, get that in. Then get some 177. So we do that darker bit at the top. And we use this to sketch in the iris. Top area, and I'm going to use our white to have a circular bend. Back to orange. to 190. First, colouring in circles makes it easier to colour. I'm going to sharpen my 177. Put in that outer ring again. Just slightly inside of the ring on the Digistamp. And then we want to make that top bit dark so it looks like it's sunk back in the eye and is below the fur. And then we want to make that well of light in the bottom. It's very formulaic at the moment. Then we're going for our black. Well, it's not very blended round, that's 190. I'm just blending that 177 at the top. Forgot a bit. It's better. Now we're going on our 199 black, and we want to do that backwards C for the centre of the eye. So backwards C, and just for some instant gratification, let's pop in the highlight and the little one on the other side. Makes you feel jolly doing that bit, so let's not put it off. Then we're just going to let our Posca paint dry and move on to the nose, which we're going to do a full layer of 190. This is our base layer. Then we're going to swap to 177. Going to sort of go around the edge of the nose to give it a definite line. I'm going to pop in our little nostril. Add a bit of shade caused by the other dog's nose. Add a bit of shade caused by his own nose. Then have a little blend. It's a little bit pinker. Onto 190, but let's pop a little bit of colour back in. I quite like the fact it's coming out a little bit redder, so I might leave that happy mistake there. Add a little bit of highlight at the front because it's going to be a wet healthy nose, and a little bit of highlight at the back. So there's our solid bits that go behind our fur done. Then on to the fur of the other dachshund. So what I thought was it would be fun to do a slightly more long-haired dachshund this time. So what I'm going to do with you is the white layer underneath that I'd do if it was a more long-haired dachshund. But other than that, all the colours and things are going to be exactly the same. So I might speed through that a bit, but you can do it yourself. I think now it's exactly the same as the other side, but the lines are going to be longer. I will show you what I'm doing, but I'm going to zip through that bit at some speed. So starting our white lines, basically you're going to add a length onto every stroke to make it that little bit longer, and we're going to go outside the lines that we've been drawn much more. So starting from the tail as before, although we're going to have our lines similar to the first dog up the tail, we're also going to have some longer lines because it's a floofy tail. So we don't want to put too much on the top, we want it to be hanging down in a bit of a floofy mass. So basically I've done the right hand side of a feather shape for the tail. So we're going to do the same again for the dog. Sharpen. So we're going to do the little feet just as we did last time, But as we come up from the back end, there are feathers, so let's do some feathers off the doggy bum. Then we're going to do some feathers off these front paws, maybe a few off that back paw, and then we're going to do feathers down all along the bottom of the dog, concentrating the longer ones at the front end. So off the side of the dog, we're going to need some longer feathers coming out from the side, but the back is actually going to be smooth, so everything's coming downwards. So I'm going to have another sharpen, and then we're going to build that body up now with slightly longer hairs. So rather than, I don't know, 5 or 6 layers I think we had before, this time perhaps only going to get in 3. So long, keeping our directions. Remember, once these are in, this is the guide for you to follow with your other colours. And let's give him a floofy chest. So that's all the body floofing, looking pretty floofy. So although they have some extra floof on their face, to be honest, it's pretty smooth again, like the other dog. But what we're going to do is we're going to do some pointing in this direction, just a few extra floof hairs coming down off his chin. And then ear-wise, the floof comes in this direction, similar to the fur underneath. So we're going to do some floof ears downwards. I'm going to continue the length of stroke and try and get it to become a little bit shorter at the top where it's going to be meeting there. So look, we're coming round the corner just as we did with the other one to meet the direction of the hair there. So the ears are more floofy. Actually the head is now pretty similar to the other dog, so we shall do that on him exactly the same as the other side. Starting at the back, oops, working up, making a slight curve for the curve of the face. So the top is relatively smooth. So I'm doing lines pretty similar to the length we did last time on the short haired dog. So trying to come around at a little bit of a semicircle because it's a rounded shape underneath. Nice fine hairs up round his nose. Okay, so you can see our white layer is somewhat more chaotic, a bit more interesting maybe, a bit more exciting, a little bit more artistic if you want to go a bit wild. You also might want to add, at this stage or later stage, you know, some curvy hairs, some waves. You can add it to the texture now, or you can add it later when you colour, up to you. So I usually start with everything pretty straight and then add waves and textures afterwards, but completely straight it will look absolutely fine, so it's up to you what you want to go with. I'm not going to repeat everything that I said for the other dog. We're going to do it in the same way though. The golden areas first, get them done, then the dark areas, build it up, doing our back. We're going to do exactly the same technique. So if you wrote down the technique from earlier, you could just follow the steps again for this dog, because I think I'll probably do it in a pretty similar way. Okay, so moving on to a bit of speed colouring. Little job I like to do right at the end is swap to a big standard sized eraser, standard style eraser I suppose I should say. This is a Montmartin medium eraser that I'm using, and I'm just going to clean the edge of my paper away from the dogs. Obviously I've done near the dogs with the electric rubber, but just going to clean up the rest of my page I suppose, image. Just make sure it all looks nice and clean. And happy with that, looking a bit cleaner. Going to cut this out to make this up into a card. So my first job is going to be cutting out my topper. So the reason why I've just done it with lines around it, but I've printed it out, is to make it super easy to cut out at this stage. Don't really need to worry about getting things straight. You can just follow the lines. Okay, cut out. And I've grabbed some brown cardstock from the stash. Unfortunately one with a white cord, but we'll have to live with that. And then I've got my 1/4 inch double-sided tape from Stamp Anything to Use. So I'm going to get this onto here. Quite like to have a dark brown surround. And also just a bit of layering makes everything tidy, doesn't it? So just add in the double-sided tape. And then getting this onto my brown card, about a 1/4 inch gap all the way around. Don't think for straight, I'm not ever very good at straight. So let's just trim this round now to be kind of level all the way around. Oh dear. There we go. It's got a little brown edge, that's going to complete our topper. Let's build up our card base now. So this is a standard DL card base, it's a shop bought one. It's approximately 21 by 10, and if you're using slightly different shorter card, different type of cardstock, it's a little bit, the top is a little bit smaller, so hopefully if you're not an A4 person, it'll still be absolutely fine. So what I want to do is just mat some papers onto the background for our topper. So I've chosen 2 papers, a nice dark red spotty one from the Summer Tropics set, and this nice woody type one from the farm life set, but I'm going for a bit of a red and brown theme. If you've got other papers, I'm sure that would be absolutely fine. And what we're going to have to do is, because we're working on a slightly longer base than our 6x6, we're going to split up this one so we can put it either end. So just moving that out the way, popping it down squarely on my board underneath, and just, I don't know, it's very slippery today, and then just popping that in half so we can use half each end. And apart. What I'm going to do is stick this on two ends and that in the middle, and then our topper can go over the top. Okay, so let's get these bits stuck down. What I'm going to do is use the double-sided tape and then stick them onto the card. Okay, so this one's going down bottom left. Let's face on the card, it would be easier. This one's going down bottom left. So let's check I've got it as it matches. It does. Just kind of want the lines to be the same. That one down. Right, I'm going to trim them off. See, yeah. This one. Trim again in a bit my base so it works out. I want to put our one in the middle. Just wanted to do the full 6 inches, yeah, maybe. Look at which side is tidiest. Tidy up a side, because that's the one we're going to be able to see at the bottom of the card. This time we're going to need to run some more tape down the sides. If you have a better way of doing this, feel free to use it. So then I'm going to pop this in the middle, line it up with the brown paper, so I don't want to see any brown paper. Stick it down, turn over and trim. Okie dokie, so that's our base now. And we're going to 3D foam that on top. So I've got some 3D foam on the roll that I'm going to use, but if you've got tabs, use tabs. going to do 2 of these. If I can coordinate my brain and my hands. Take off the backing. And let's get this lined up in the middle. Hoping that the spots in the background will help. Fail, try again. Better. Okey-dokey. And down. So I'm going to add just a few embellishments. I'm going to use some clay embellishments. So I've got some of the heart sprinkle mix, and I've got the Perfect Blend sprinkle mix, and from them I've extracted some little hearts to use as my embellishment. So I mean, use whatever you fancy. Just thought hearts were cute, so I'm going to kind of lay these on where I want them. Threes are always pleasing, aren't they, to your eye and brain? Maybe a little bit symmetrical. So let's bob them on. I'm going to use my sticky tool. I'm going to use I've got a sticky pokey tool, got a Stamp Anything glue tube. Well, hopefully I can just do little dabs while they're in situ. Nice thing about it is it dries clear if you have a bit of a mess up, or you get around the edge like I've just done on that one. Not enough. Keep going. And I will give it a shake in a bit and make sure everything's stuck down properly. And my final touch, I'm going to use some Stickles glitter glue, but use whatever sort of glittery stuff you've got. And on the red ones, I'm going to add a little layer of glitter onto my clay embellishments to just add a bit of bling to the card. Okay, so I'm going to wait for that to dry, but I hope you're happy with your version of this. I hope you enjoyed doing a slightly long head wiry dachshund and a sort of a normal dachshund, or sausage dog as we call them, or wiener dog as I know some of you call them. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad Annie drew me up some dachshunds. They're one of my favourites. I love a sausage. Okay then, bye.